We are reconvened in the committee room for an update on the 2017-2019 long-range plan. And to present tonight's update, we have none other than Dave Fieldman. I'm going to say that from now on.
Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor said, it's an update to the 2017 to 2019 long-range plan. I'm reading from the board on my right here. Really two components to the update. One is to identify and address and discuss issues which may affect the 2019 budget and beyond, and to provide a progress report on this council's priority action items. Our update takes place over a 3-meeting period. We had the first meeting on May 15th. We talked about general fund issues on the revenue and expense side. The next meeting is tonight's meeting. We're talking about priority action items. We'll give you a status report and the opportunity for any redirection or updated direction from the village council. And then we'll come back on July 10th and we will talk about other post-employment benefits, that is providing mandatory health care benefits to retirees and how that affects village finances moving forward. For reference, I placed our long-standing strategic goals that are in our long-range plan right there on the whiteboard as they may come up later tonight in discussion. This council, when we created the 2017 to 2019 long-range plan, identified priority action items that would be the work plan for this council that would support the strategic goals and would address many of the key issues identified in the 2017 long-range planning process. We have 3 items which we've already completed. They are listed here on the board, and since they're completed, I want to really not focus on those, but I want to focus on the ones that are in progress and the ones that we have not yet started. The ones in progress, starting in the middle here, create a plan for the future of the downtown. Remember, this is not a plan for the physical or built environment. We're not talking about buildings, etc. We're talking more about how do we pay for services in the downtown, entity is going to provide them, financing tools, general strategies that aren't directly related to zoning and development. We had put together an ad hoc committee of 12 members. They met 6 times in the last 6 months. They just wrapped up their meetings earlier this month. The bottom line here is we are on schedule with this project. We plan to give a report to the Village Council in September. It's a strategic level report. It will guide the next steps as we aim towards some key decisions coming up in about 2020. So on schedule, report coming to the council in September. The next one you may be familiar with because we just talked about it in the meeting preceding this, update to the downtown zoning. We are on track to change the text of the downtown zoning here in July, and then we move forward to the rezoning, actual rezonings of properties to fit on the map, as we just discussed. That will come to you in early fall. We are on track with this project. The plan to address OPEB, other post-employment benefits, it is a priority action item. As I just mentioned, this plan will come to the Village Council in July. Once the council directs us on the actual plan, we will begin implementation. It will start showing up in budget documents with the 2019 budget. Amendments to the stormwater regulations. This is to address the negative impacts caused by residential development. This is a long-time project. It's been ongoing for several months now. In fact, the Village Council has been considering this continuously since October of 2017. Our next discussion is set for August. Note that we don't have a particular end date. That is because this is such a challenging policy issue. Many options on the table, all of them requiring balance rather than a particular set of solutions. We don't have an end date yet. We need to see where that conversation takes us. I suspect that by the end of the year we'll have really good direction of where we're going on that. The next one is to identify and implement a major service consolidation, cooperation, or collaboration. You may hear the mayor refer to this as a 3 C's project. You may recall that we identified potential operation of a regional or township area-wide peer jury program. So now we are focusing, this project has become the peer jury project. We are set to give a report to the Village Council on July 17th, the last meeting in July. We'll present the report at that time, and I suspect that in August, the council will provide direction on which of any of the options to pursue on that project. On schedule with this project. The next one, increase our sales tax base and revenue by implementing the Economic Development Corporation's sales tax plan and their strategic plan. This is a project that is really always in progress. It's sort of what we do in our partnership with the Economic Development Corporation. Michael Casa provided us a written report in our materials, but really I think tonight when he went through the accomplishments in the quarter really captured all the progress that we've made, especially with the good news we received in sales tax. So that is always in progress. So those are the projects that we're working on right now. We have 3 more projects that will get started at some point after we complete the ones that are listed in progress. The first one here is updating the zoning map. We're talking about the entire village zoning map to comport with the recommendations of the 2017 comprehensive plan. We will start this project once the update to the downtown zoning is finished. So we'll wrap up those rezonings in the fall, then we will immediately start this project. This project should be much less of a scope, fewer discussion issues. So we think we're on track to start that in the fall and complete it in early to mid 2019. The next one that we haven't started yet is amendments to the storm water utility credits and incentives program. This is directly related to the stormwater regulations that we may put in place, especially for residential properties. So this project will start once we conclude the stormwater regulation amendments. Provided that these regulations get done by the end of the year or early part of 2019, we should be in a position to complete that by mid-2019. Again, the scope of that is much smaller than the scope of the regulatory issues. And finally, the last one here is to implement the recommendations that are found in the comprehensive plan for the Fairview focus area. This is the area of Fairview Avenue and the railroad tracks and the several blocks around it in all directions. This project is a very large scope and is akin to the steps we took for our downtown revitalization efforts in the mid to late 1990s. So a very large project. This is the only project on our list that we're saying we are likely not to get to under this council's work plan. It is likely to start sometime, if still identified by the next council, in that time frame. The reason is the combination of the very large scope of this project and that a couple of these other projects are taking a little bit longer than we had originally anticipated, particularly downtown zoning and the stormwater regulations. So that is the status on all of this council's identified priority action items. All are ongoing, schedule either completed with only one heads up that we may not get to under this time frame. Happy to answer any questions or respond to any discussion about changes in direction or scheduling for any of these projects.
Questions?
Including the public asking questions?
Not yet. I was making sure.
Okay, I gave us some time. I think everything's on track. I don't have anything I feel I need to add. I think everything is on track. I'm quite content. I mean, obviously we'd like to get stuff done faster, but there's constraints. And within the scope of the constraints, I think this is going quite well.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
Yeah.
Well, I'll throw a comment out there as long as that seems to be what we're doing. This is not a criticism of our staff, it's a criticism I think of us. I feel completely the opposite the way Bill does here. Identify and adopt new revenues, we picked one. That's hardly a sea change kind of an event or a management of what we know is an impending disaster for our community. Increased sales tax base by an EDC sales tax plan. Dave said it's in progress. Yeah, it's in progress. It's been in progress every moment that the EDC has been in existence. The fact that we are supportive of that can't possibly be something that is noteworthy on our task list. That seems to me kind of ridiculous. We're not getting to the focus area on Fairview because we, the 7 of us, can't get out of our own way on some of these things like downtown zoning and stormwater regs. The staff is more capable of accelerating us. We are the ones that drag that down. We can't seem to decide much. I mean, Greg's recount of that zoning change downtown was, I think, accurate, because basically we got too much input from too many people and decided there was too much headache associated with it, so let's leave it the way it is. We should be doing more, I think. So the stuff that we're doing, I think, is good stuff. The list should be longer, and the things that are not yet started should be accelerated. We probably can't, but that's on us. I see it way differently.
I think that's contrary to the council manager form of government. And I think it'd be very difficult to have staff do more unless we hired a lot more staff.
It's contrary to the council manager form of government for us to be decision-making quicker.
It's for us to be making decisions at a high level. And I think this council has been given staff direction at a high level, and staff executes that direction. So, but that's as far as I'm going this evening. I think the long-range plan for 17-19 is a good plan, and there are reasons that shouldn't be discussed on the record right now, why the Fairview focus area is probably better off postponed to 19 or 20, irregardless of our capacity. Facts on the ground having to do with property owners in that area. Stormwater, as it's been explained, has been one of the most thorny and complicated public policy issues staff has dealt with. And that's not on us, that's the reality on the ground. Downtown zoning, staff came up with an extraordinarily elegant solution that allowed us to get 85% of what our original goal is and do it on time to have that finished before the end of the year. And that's an enormous accomplishment by staff. The staff's done a phenomenal job. It's not our job to run the village. It's our job to give staff 30, 40,000 foot direction and let the paid professionals run the village.
It was eloquent, Bill. I appreciate the reminder of my job.
Well, you're allowed to have your own opinion. That's my opinion of what our job is. If you disagree, that's fine.
I'm not disagreeing with you. That's sort of my point, Bill. I'm not suggesting that we make decisions at a different level. Downtown zoning's elegant plan was an effort to try and find a way to get this group to move forward because we couldn't seem to. The stormwater situation is an effort to try and get this group to move forward because we can't seem to. They're trying to work around us, not around us, bad choice of words. They're trying to help us get past ourselves. It's not a matter, you and I are not disagreeing on where we fit in the flight plan analogy of decision making. There's not a piece of disagreement between you and I on that. But we have had opportunities to make actual decisions that we've chosen not to. Usually because we get enough input from different directions that we're a little bit stuck. And I think that we're missing opportunities to get more work done because we drag these out. So obviously that's where the opinion comes in. I understand that we differ. But make no mistake, I don't misunderstand or disagree with you on our flight level plan.
Greg?
No, I think I'll leave it at that.
All right. Well, my only comment on that is that that's somewhat of a, it's like saying the sun rises in the east. 16 years, we've had projects that we can't get done because there's 7 people here who reflect 50,000 people in the community. And guess what? People have differences of opinion, and if it was just me, we'd be on 5 different whiteboards from now. But that's not the way we work. That's not the way the community is. It took 10 years to get the stormwater utility in place.
That's a problem, Mark.
Well, it's a problem, Bob, but it's reflective of the community. And it's very easy to do things if you just simply say, as they do in some towns, here's a plan, you have a meeting, you have public comment, you vote on it, you're done. We don't do that in Downers Grove. I mean, I know communities where they give 5 minutes of comment on any major initiative and they just vote on it. And be damned what anybody has to say in the community. I won't point out any communities, but there's some and they get a lot done. That's never the way Downers Grove has rolled. I mean, I can go back 20 years. It's never been that way. I share and empathize with your frustration. I could come up probably a longer list of things I'd like done in this community than you.
No doubt.
And they don't get done because there's not complete agreement within the community about how to do it. And sometimes when we don't do the thing we thought we were going to do, we end up with something better. Which, actually, a little bit of time there turned out with a better product. Sometimes we don't. I don't think it's a function any more than just the collective process. And that this community's always been very engaged. It's always had very informed people who have disparate opinions about things. And I think all of us do the best we can. I mean, I even pull examples where I think you've gotten new information and you decided to change direction. We all have. And that slows down the process. Sometimes we give staff a challenge, they come up with something, we ask them to put a square peg into a round hole, they figure out a way to do it. But then we say, I don't like that. I mean, I can go back to the OASIS programs, all kinds of things that we thought we could do, and it didn't work, and we tried something else. But we've always been very mindful of trying to get community input, which by definition is going to slow things down than if it was just, if this was a private organization and we didn't have to worry about what other people thought, we could get a lot of things done. And some of them would be good, some of them would be bad.
There's probably some balance there. There's no doubt that
Yeah.
our job is to try and bring input from the community into our decision-making process.
And it necessarily slows things down.
Yeah, but there are opportunities to move faster, and we've put ourselves, not even this council, prior councils, we put ourselves into tough boxes for the community with things like the pace of downtown redevelopment, post initiation of the TIF. There's a history in Downers that you're accurately reflecting that I think we're hurting ourselves if we're not moving faster. That is not the same as the sort of binary opportunity you gave or decision you gave about wanting no input or holding people at 5 minutes. If there's no ground in between those two, then we all probably need to rethink this.
But there are also people out there, which you have to recognize, think we move too fast on downtown redevelopment.
Is there anything that you can think of that we move too fast on?
That I think we move too fast
You think
on?
we
No,
move-
not me.
Okay.
Not me, but
All right.
we all know that there are segments of this community that think we've moved way too fast in the wrong direction on
And for
a lot of things on that list.
20 years, people have thought that you make a good leader in this community, and yet you're not thinking we move too fast on anything. We're not moving too fast on anything, Mark.
Like I said, Bob, if it was just up to me, we'd be on 3 whiteboards from now. And this isn't a criticism of anyone in this room, because it was the last council, the council before that, and the council before that, and the mayor before that, and the mayor before that. It was all like Becky Cheever. It's the way it is. I think we all do the best we can.
I would be more than happy to live with being wrong more often and being in the minority more often if we would try and move faster. Because I think that while there are certainly opportunities that we can point to where we didn't move and maybe we got a better deal, that's true buying a car, buying a house, when you have your kid. It's like 20/20 hindsight, crystal ball stuff. It doesn't make a lot of sense. There are absolutely situations where we could have done better by moving quicker.
Yes, and I also think that we would have moved quicker, done faster if more of us were better at bringing along our colleagues. Because we can't do anything without 4 votes. Sometimes we can't do it with even 5 or 6.
Sometimes not 4.
But if all of us were better at bringing our colleagues along, then we'd have a lot more done. And I think we all could do better in that regard.
Fair enough.
But it is what it is.
I'm going to wind up somewhere in the middle here. As usual. As usual. No,
making my point.
I think we're moving appropriately in most cases. There's a few things where various splits in councils where you need a certain amount of votes and it comes up short, but it's all for a reason. And I think we're moving purposely. Mayor, you've been involved in village government for a long time, as have I, maybe not sitting on the dais, but I got at least a couple of decades where I've been following what's been going on. And you move too fast and you wind up paying for it for a very, very long time and you can't get out of things. And I'd mention them, but it create a lot of sores among the public because there's still some controversy over some of the things that we've done. Sometimes you can only move as fast as your revenue. Things have gotten tough, and you can't build new bridges or start grandiose plans if you're having revenue problems, if you're getting challenges from let's say from the state. There's a lot of things that keep you from moving quickly forward, and I think what we have done in the last number of years is moving purposely. We have a staff that sure, it's slow if you have more meetings or you have ad hoc groups and the like, but you get that input, and that is purposeful, and that's what makes what we do better. You know, we're trying to address what's going to happen with the downtown in 2019. That's on here. We'll get a report on that. Zoning, you can tell, even tonight, we've had questions about what we're doing with our downtown remapping and rezoning and planning. You don't want to take a downtown plan and rush it through just so that we can check off, oh yeah, look what we accomplished. That's for decades in the future, and you have to move purposefully. Stormwater, I fear that there's going to be a lot of stormwater that we aren't just going to be able to address. I don't know, the 80-20 rule. We might be able to get 80% of it and not be able to do anything with the other 20, but let's see what happens. We've had council members on stormwater say, oh, this is what we ought to do, and we ought to develop this, and then we get a report that says, hey, if you do that, you're going to chase away redevelopment. It's going to be too expensive. Oh, well, we don't want. How much time do we spend talking about that, and then find out we shouldn't do that? That's not going to work. And so I think we're moving appropriately. There's big stuff on the priority list, and there's some other big stuff that we're going to have to do. So I'm pleased with this report of where we are. I think over the next couple of months we're going to be very busy, and I don't think anybody's going to complain about the amount of work that's going to have to be done on our agenda, even if we cancel a few meetings here and there. So you get a plan commission approvals or these quick consent agenda items that we're moving on, but some of these items are they're huge, and we need to be careful how we move and get the input from the public and also meet the challenges of what we can afford to do. So I'm fairly pleased.
Thanks, Bill. Greg?
Thanks, Mayor. There's a purposeful action is good. Being deliberate is good, but there's a difference between being purposeful and being deliberate and being indecisive and missing opportunities. And I think that's really what has been highlighted in the conversation over the last 15 minutes or so. We've gotten some good work done on a number of these issues, but when it comes to stormwater regs, I think it's less of an issue, the indecisiveness, because it's such an impactful issue. But when it comes to downtown zoning, we've gone from downtown business and downtown transition to including downtown core, and then it became downtown edge, and then that became edge 1 and 2. And now we're back to no edge, but we're keeping the core and keeping business in transition. And we've gone back and forth on certain parts of the downtown and others, and whether it's going to be downtown business or transition, et cetera. And we've done all that over the course of about the last 18 months. Dave, if I'm wrong on that time frame, please go ahead and correct me. But that's indecisiveness in my mind. And folks can have a different opinion, that's fine. But that does fall on us. And it's that sort of thing, and it's missing opportunities. The same sort of thing happened that I'll go ahead and sling the dead cat on the table. We did it with facilities. And as a result, we're going to end up paying more because interest rates are rising, and we're only going to end up still having to replace the police department, or police station rather, and this building, and we're going to end up paying more money for it. And I think it's a shame that we get mired in indecisiveness and miss opportunities as a result, and it's to the detriment of our community.
And that's not even on the list.
Thanks, Mayor.
So I think there are other words for it, and obviously people feel strongly on a lot of these things different ways. As I mentioned, there were things that I pushed for years ago that took 8-9 years to do that I would have done the next day, but I had to bring the whole community along with me, and it took a long time. Historic preservation, we can all go on and on with the banners that we have each carried on different topics that we all think didn't get across the finish line as soon as they should have. Some have yet to get across the finish line. Well, I think, needless to say, we could all point out things that we're frustrated haven't been done. And let me just say, to be clear, none of this got anything to do with staff. It's got to do with whether you want to call it indecisiveness, you want to call it accommodation, you want to call it like getting to a comfort zone. This is all because individuals come at things differently, both on this council, prior councils, in the community, and I think everybody tries to do the best they can. We all, again, can point to things where I think we've not moved fast enough because, and again, I would say it's because we have been perhaps not as effective as bringing along 3 of our colleagues, because we brought along 3 of our colleagues, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So not being able to bring them along all of them is the issue. But anyway, from what we've asked staff to do, to go back to the point, and I do want to see if other people have questions up here before I go to the public. I can't complain that given what staff has been tasked to do and the constraints that they've operated under, and whether you want to call it indecisiveness or accommodation or new information or whatever, I think you're making very good progress. Could we do better? Of course we could. Of course we could move faster. If it was up to me, but it's not. I'm 1 of 7 votes. All of us are 1 of 7 votes. That's the way it works.
Well, I think
So based on what's up here on the board,
But I mean, you got 7 votes, but I don't know of any council member who's been indecisive.
even deciding to not decide is being decisive.
I mean, as a group, you know, I mean, you tend to
Didn't
think,
Jenny Lee say that?
when you lose, when
Free will.
you're on one side of an issue, when you're on one side of an issue and you lose, you complain that it's indecisive.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's productive to throw out who's indecisive or whatnot.
Well, no, I mean, but as a group, I mean, you know, you feel, oh, we haven't accomplished this because I didn't accomplish what I wanted. But I think the council members that we've had, the current council, previous councils, I think when you stand up or when you have your opportunity to present your reasons and you have good reasons, you are being decisive and representative.
And I want to compliment this council right now, because on this, I know this is something we always have to do, but ladies and gentlemen, I've worked with a lot of people over long years. This council's been very supportive of some creative solutions to get things done that have been very, very important economic development contributions to this community, whether this community even recognizes it or not. But this council has been very willing to be creative and thoughtful, and that's very important. I don't think there's been any indecisive there. This council's been very good at that. I've seen some that are not.
I think kind of what you've just highlighted, Martin, it has to do with,
That'd be way back.
if we have to do something and we have to, and this council has, at least what I've seen, when we have to make that decision now, we make it and it's done. But on the stuff that we have a little bit more time, it's not a race, and we want to do our due diligence, and some of it's taken longer. And that's the way it is, because it's not a race. We're doing our due diligence, we're doing the best we can, we're coming up with as many creative solutions as we can. They may work, they may not work, we have to maybe vet them all the way to the end, and that takes some time to find out that they're not going to work, unfortunately. And even when we thought that that's where we were going, and we wind up back in the same spot. But, you know, at least where it becomes to the, you know, sales tax stuff, the revenue stuff, the EDC stuff, the strategic stuff, where we're trying to work together with them to implement some solutions to get our revenues back up, because we have been in a very, very challenging situation for the last 10 years, where our backs are up against a wall. How fast can you move when you only can slide against the wall? I mean, at some point, you're losing staff, you're losing people, which, and how much more can you do when you're losing the people who are doing it? So, I see what you're saying, Bob, but there's some of the stuff, it's not a race. Some of the stuff, it's more important to get right than it is to get it done fast.
Can I just, I don't want to cut off comments, I want to make sure Nicole has an opportunity to weigh in too, but I believe there were 2 questions that were asked. One was any change in direction or any additions? Were those the 2 questions? So I'm going to go back to that rather than the therapy session we've been engaging in for the last 20 minutes.
Or if they're going to get out.
just want to comment about downtown zoning. I believe the current version of downtown zoning is better than any of the drafts we could have approved in the past. And that taking a few months, if we just said, okay, fine, that's good enough, we'd have a worse downtown zoning than if we stick all the way through the process. That is better. And I do want to make the observation that every department of the village has a substantive, difficult project to work on. Community developments at full capacity, handling downtown zoning. Public, stormwater, Nan Newland, working with the village manager, has one of the most complicated stormwater problems they've handled. The police department is very busy working on peer jury. Every department of the village is working at capacity. Every department of the village is working at capacity. In the spring of 17, I was the only person to move forward now with a facility solution. Commissioner Barnett wanted the medical building. Commissioner Jose wanted the apartments. And yes, we were unable to come to a decision to move forward. But had we done that, staff would not have the capacity to be doing these projects because we'd be building a new building. And I personally believe we absolutely and positively need to move forward with the townhome option immediately in May of 19, once all this work is done. And had we gone forward in 17, this work would not have been done. So to move forward decisively in the spring of 19, as soon as the new council is sworn in, I very strongly believe we should do that, after this work is done.
2 questions. Any change of direction, anything to add?
No, on both of those for me.
Okay.
And to underscore, Mark, what you talked about earlier, just because it's on record, and I know some team members are here and others are watching, this therapy session that I've opened up here has nothing to do with our staff. There's not a time that I can think of in the time that I've been up here that we, as a council, have tasked our staff with something, and it hasn't been delivered really well. Timely too, yeah, and but also well, Martin.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I was adding.
we start something and get a lot of education along the way too.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to get that lost in the various conversations.
Change direction. Adding anything?
No.
All right. Deep breath.
I got one more thing. I want another
Exhale.
I want another therapy thing, Mayor. Marge, I'm glad you said race, because it's helping me understand maybe why we're looking at this entirely differently. Because I do see us in a race. I really do. I see us in a major race driven entirely by finances. And that's a whole other conversation which will continue. But all of these things we do have a push or a pull on our financial condition, I think. Whether they're how developed is downtown, that all affects later on how easily or difficult it is for people to do things downtown. Our sales tax system, what things we're going to tax, they all drive that. And I still believe that we are in a race, that we are going to run out of money as a community for the current way we operate and the way we generate revenue. And so that's probably why we're looking at it differently, because I really do feel that. I feel every day that we're in a race. We're in a race to end up in a good position, because none of this stuff that's been a problem in 10 years is going to get better on its own. None of it's going to get better to our benefit. And so I see it as a race. I'm glad you said that, because maybe that's part of why we can't see it the same way.
But you seem to think there's a finish line.
Yeah, I do. Probably not for tonight, but yeah, I do.
Okay.
But thanks for saying it. I mean, this is, Martin, I know this is annoying probably, but we got to have it.
I was going to say, we're all together.
These are good conversations for all of us to have.
I'm not annoyed at all. All right, we'll come back to the council. Are there any questions from the audience?
How about a comment?
Absolutely. Please.
I continue to be somewhat baffled by the idea that one of the strategic goals is the phrase environmental sustainability. A number of years ago in one of these sessions, I asked the question what metrics the village was using to address its success or not in meeting that goal. And my perception at the time was that there was a lot of singing and dancing, but an acknowledgement ultimately that there were no such metrics. And in continuing to watch what the council has done since then, I continue to be perplexed by, I guess you could say, one of two things. Either that it continues to be a goal when I see nothing actually happen in anything that comprises an effort to address what environmental sustainability means in any context, zoning, long-term planning, what have you. And if it's not going to be actually implemented as a goal, then drop it. But on the other hand, I would say, yes, I agree that it should be a goal, and I'm disappointed that I don't see more actually being done to actually meet that as a goal.
I appreciate your comment, and I would agree with you that there is no metric that by X date the following Y things will be done. But I would disagree with you that nothing has been done. The green business program has been in effect for a number of years.
If you don't have a metric,
Then you know what? Nothing I'm going to say is going to answer your question satisfactorily, because you're correct. There's no metric, but it is incorrect to say nothing's been done. I could give you a list of a dozen things right now, but I will tell you that there is no got to get these 12 done in this way in this time that are going to measure this, this, and this. You're right.
you can't differentiate that as conscience laundering versus something that actually has an impact.
No, I don't think it's conscious laundering at all. I think it's there as something that we want the community and staff to be mindful of and to implement when opportunities present themselves, which they do. So that's where the list of a dozen things that I can think of just off the top of my head come from, including things that we have been at the forefront of municipalities in DuPage County. So if leadership in this space is a goal, we have achieved it on multiple occasions. If you're talking about, and you're absolutely right, that we are going to improve water quality by X amount, you got me. Is that something we're required to do under Phase 2 of the Clean Water Act? Yes. And do we implement measures in conjunction with DuPage County to do that? Yes. Those are more the metrics I think you're thinking of. You make a good point. Maybe one of the things that we should do under that goal in the future, it's not going to happen in this long-range plan, is to have a more identifiable measure. In fact, now I'm thinking maybe the Environmental Concerns Commission could look into that. That's a very good suggestion.
Well, the Environmental Concerns Commission is largely a joke at this point. I don't know that there's anybody actually on the commission that actually has a notion of what environmental sustainability means.
There's 2 members of the EPA on the Environmental Concerns Commission.
Well, whenever I look at what they're doing, I see they're canceling meetings or they're talking about things that ultimately, from my assessment, yield very little in the way of comfort on saying that Downers Grove is actually moving in the direction of what I would assert is conforming to a notion of environmental sustainability.
Right. Well, I guess we could also
You
debate.
can do something.
Yeah, we could also debate what is it. Yeah, you're right. What is environmental sustainability? Because I bet you I would ask everybody in this room, we'd all give a different answer. So maybe coming up with some definition that could then be used as a benchmark to me would be an appropriate thing for us to ask the Environmental Concerns Commission to me and actually provide us with some valuable input and recommendations on how to do that. I think that's actually a good idea.
And that's my point. I asked the question a number of years ago. Nothing has been done since.
On that point, you're right.
One of the purposes of these goals, or at least the way they've been utilized by staff and council over the last several years, is that they guide a lot of the decisions, irrespective of what items might come up on agendas or on our task lists or high priority action items or things brought to us. As we just make decisions about what does it mean to do any one of these things, we use this set of goals as a guide. So we're going to not make, maybe we're not measuring it the way you'd like it measured, it's a fair question, but we're not making decisions about any new subjects that we believe are in conflict with these goals. So we're not making decisions about tax law, we're not making decisions about downtown zoning, we're not making decisions about stormwater that we believe are somehow either worse or in conflict with the idea of environmental sustainability and
Solid waste, fleet maintenance.
They come up, decisions come up here in these meetings, they also come up daily at staff levels, and these goals are what serve as kind of boundaries and guides to the decision-making process that happens all year long at all levels of the organization. So I guess it's, maybe reiterating what the mayor said, we certainly can come up with a list. It's not a metric per se, but there's a lot of evidence day in and day out on big items and little items that those are important and drive decision-making.
Well, if you could come up with some way of proving that whatever is being done is somehow more than conscience laundering, given that at the macro level, at the global level, most of the data that continues to be put out there is suggesting that humanity is not making much headway in terms of things like climate change and peak oil, if anyone in this room is even familiar with the term peak oil, then I'd be impressed that that was going on. But I don't see that. I haven't seen it since the years that I asked the question. I've had conversations with people that give me the impression that if you bring up the subject of environmental sustainability within the context of economic development, oh my God, we throw up our hands and say we can't do anything, along the lines of what one of the commissioners mentioned a moment ago, that that's a threat to bringing people in who are going to provide more property tax revenue for the village or something of that sort. And it's that kind of conversation that I'm saying appears to me to be completely missing if you're going to say you have a goal of environmental sustainability.
Those would be bad, those would be incorrect impressions if they were given. That's all I can say at this point.
I go back in the history of the decisions that council has made regarding the parking deck, LED lighting, other lighting situations, Grove Street, where we tried something new.
Fryo
You know,
diesel,
Pardon?
Fryo diesel, the
Yeah,
CNG fleet.
So, I mean, these are things that are embedded in a lot of our decisions. And sometimes we spend more money to do that than taking the cheaper route. So before you can come in and say we haven't done anything, just go back through the agendas and look at some of those issues. It's maybe in the background, we don't sit there and debate environmental sustainability, but it's in there, so.
Well, let me give a specific example. There's a book called Great Lakes Water Wars, I believe is the title. If you read that book, you see in the book that essentially Illinois and Chicago in particular has a very cavalier attitude in terms of the whole notion of protecting the Great Lakes water. The specific example that to me is a contrast between the way Illinois is continuing to operate, from which Downers Grove benefits, by the way, is that the town of Waukesha, Wisconsin, had to jump through major hoops in order to be able to pull water out of Lake Michigan, because initially they resisted having to go through the process of returning that water after cleaning it into Lake Michigan. Illinois doesn't do that, right? Illinois, Chicago, pulls water out of the lake. How much of that water gets returned to the lake after it's cleaned? I don't know the exact number, but my understanding is most of it gets sent down to Mississippi. Downers Grove benefits from that because the allocation that Chicago and Illinois originally got in order to satisfy manufacturing remains in place, and because most of the manufacturing in Chicago is now vanished for elsewhere, but the water limits have continued to be in place. The city of Chicago is free to do what it's doing, which is to sell water to DuPage and communities like this, which allows communities like Downers Grove to continue to grow because Downers Grove is now tapping into Lake Michigan water.
Well, I certainly appreciate the overall point you're making, which is could we define what environmental sustainability means as a goal, and then how do we measure our collective success towards it? That's a fair question. I appreciate your comment in that regard. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Anything else that anyone on the council wants to share with their counselor? You have 10 minutes left on today's session.
Actually, one very quick comment, and I say this, I saw this on Facebook today. Lisle Watchdogs is a group of citizens who watch Lisle government. And earlier today, there was a post saying, why can't Lisle do long-range planning like Downers Grove does? And I took a screenshot of that because it says, The process used by the Village of Downers Grove to develop and maintain a long-range strategic plan. A series of open meetings, video recorded, held annually at Village Hall that welcome, solicit, and invite public input. And then there's a screenshot of Long Range Plan 2017, which they posted, and we're being held up as an example to other communities about how we do long-range planning. I think that's a compliment to both
Appreciate that
staff and
post on the
council.
Wild Facebook.
Next time, change your last name, I'll say DK.
No, actually, Wild Watchdogs, I think.
Yeah.
That was a joke. That was a joke. That's a.
When he's infiltrated the organization.
Thank you, thank you. Absolutely better at that. Thank you for sharing that. I would dare say that that happens quite a lot in a lot of different contexts, but no chess beating today. Anything else on this topic? Anything else from us?
Thank you.
I heard no change of directions, I heard no new items.
We appreciate that. July 10th, we'll come back and we'll talk about our plan for post-employment benefits, so.
All right.
Ready. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate everyone sticking around and joining us in the committee room. Thank you. I will ask for a motion to adjourn, but I'm going to make one request immediately after adjournment, since we're probably never going to have all 7 of us together, these shirts, ever again. We do need to take a photograph.
Motion to adjourn, subject to a picture.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you. Happy Independence Day.